Hello, and welcome to Wonkette's Weekend Live Chat. I am Robin Pinocchia, and this is the lovely and talented Stephen Robinson. How are you doing today,
Hello,
Stephen?
Robin. I'm okay. How are you?
I am swell. Um,
We
it's
were going to
actually just,
talk about Mr. George Santos, if that literally is his real name, because he has apparently a bunch of other names he goes by, which is fine. I mean, Kang the Conqueror has many different names as well. My question for you,
Snoop
you had
Dogg.
covered, yes,
Snoop Dogg has had a
John
lot of names.
John
Um,
Mellencamp, was then John Cougar.
Puff Daddy has had a lot. That's really, I think, the most amount of names. I'm not sure which one he's even on now. So maybe that is what keep calling him Kyle. That maybe that is what our friend George is going for. Hmm?
So, can you tell me, you had covered yesterday this latest thing where it looks like he was a scarf stealer, which I suspect was just an excuse for you to rant about Burberry scarves. But
Yes, they're
what
wealth
was the deal?
indicators.
They're wealth indicators? What do you mean?
Yeah, they're wealth indicators. Wealth indicators are super boring things that everyone knows is, oh, that costs a lot of money, and then people think that you're important, or people like me when I was selling stuff were like, oh, this person is a great mark. I can sell them anything and they are willing to buy it. So anything like Burberry scarves, Tory Burch flats, or the boots, um, the Van Cleef and Arpels necklace, all of that stuff. Like, it's hi, I have money to spend and I'm so basic that I'm going to pick the thing that everyone like will recognize. Um, They're especially wealth indicators if they're referred to as ascots. You can buy cheap ascots. This was $18, and it could function as an ascot. I like if I were a fella.
Or a neckerchief? Ascots
Yeah,
are specifically, not that I have a collection of ascots, but
which I
I do.
think is a lie.
I in fact do,
You
but they are
absolutely have an
actually
ascot.
they are actually designed differently and fold differently, kind of, than a scarf. I've seen people try to make scarves into ascots, and it's a strange thing. So, but he stole the scarf. Was that what happened?
Yes. So it
Or
was his. It came from his ex roommate. Two of his ex roommates confirmed that he stole the Burberry scarf from him and then wore it on television, which is, in front of all these people, which is pretty freaking ballsy, I have to say. Like, if I stole something, I mean, I'm not really like big on thievery, but I'd be less obvious, I think. I don't think I'd wear the thing that I stole on national television while speaking to a like large crowd of people. That seems, taking that is ballsy. That's no one's going to call me out on this, and it's going to be fine. I will not be arrested for grand larceny. Um,
um, he's also forgive forgive my being slightly ungallant here, but he is not a particularly very attractive man. Maybe people find him very attractive, but he's sort of
no,
um and my friend David Avalon and I had a big debate about this regarding the film The Talented Mr. Ripley, if you recall the movie,
no, I
and
haven't seen it
how
since like a long time.
the Tom Ripley is sort of an inveterate liar, and we thought the casting of was off, like having Matt Damon be Ripley and Jude Law be the actual rich guy, because we felt like the actual rich guy who doesn't need to justify his status or set, like he's assumed to be there, shouldn't be Jude Law at his peak gorgeousness. Jude Law at his peak gorgeousness is more effective as the guy, because you look at him and you'd want to believe what he's telling you more so than
Yeah,
perhaps um, a Matt Damon, who was played him somewhat awkwardly. The film kicks off with someone presuming that he is a Princeton graduate who went to school with his son because he's wearing a Princeton jacket that he just happened to borrow from someone, and he kind of lets the lie continue. But Santos is someone who I just would never believe because he just looks kind of scuzzy. Like
He does. He looks sleazy. Like, I actually think that that's probably, this is just like my analysis here in terms of my experience with people in fashion. I do think that part of the reason why someone like him would wear a lot of wealth indicators is because people are more inherently trusting of the rich. It is a thing. We assume that rich people are more safe, more, that they did something to earn it. And so when you see people wearing something, that is, obviously expensive or something like that, you're like, oh, this person is probably not going to murder me. This person is probably not going to be a giant con artist. They have enough for themselves.
Oh yeah,
like they're not trying to scam anyone else.
Well, there's a story of
yeah.
A friend of mine from college was a liberal. It's one of those things where she admitted having done this once. She was lost in New York City, and this is when she was in college in the mid-90s, and immediately gone to a white guy dressed as you would describe, like in khakis and whatever, to get direction. She was kind of like, and that's some sort of internalized racism, because it's like, and I've watched every serial killer movie,
and they're all white dudes
dressed in the cat, like, but yet I still
that to me reads serial killer.
And that to me still read safe, even though I was lost. But she was in the South Bronx. Like, well, you're lost in a place where it's predominant. Maybe you should go to the person who's actually looks like they live in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Stereotypes, but people tend not to. And Santos is a person of color. I mean, I think of Elizabeth Holmes and some other people, they've used examples of whiteness, kind of even bland whiteness gets you a certain way, whereas he's like a not especially attractive person of color and still was able to kind of sort of a brown George Costanza, was able to sort of lie his way through things, and that tends to be somewhat shocking for a lot of us. He's able to get away with it. The thing
is that he's not especially charming.
No.
Like, you listen to him and you're not like, wow, I have been taken on a journey with this guy. I've actually had grifters in my life before. They were incredibly, there's like one girl, super long time ago who, I don't know, still owes me rent. But like, those people are like, they're charming. They're funny. They're interesting to talk to. This guy is like very bored. Like, he does not appear to have a lot of charisma. Am I missing something? Does he have charisma to other people?
No. Can I play a bit? I think our friend Michael Mora had dropped into a Twitter chat, a group chat, this of him talking about. Let's see if you can hear it.
I'm not hearing anything.
Oh, sorry.
We should really figure out the like screen switch thing, like where we can just like put a computer screen up on the thing. If someone knows how to do that, let me know. But
I could have. Yeah, I could have.
Okay.
I could have dropped it in a different chat later, but essentially he's just describing in very deep detail having essentially been a star volleyball player. And like
that too.
In very and it is just, the lie goes on in such detail. Like, again, a lot of, which is why he's almost more pathological liar than an actual successful con artist, because con artists don't generally do that. They let you lead them. They let you lead them along the way or provide the stuff, but and often trying to divert conversations from specifics, but he like would go all out, almost daring to be caught, because a lot of this stuff would be pretty obviously lies.
Yeah.
So
But the thing that's interesting about the volleyball thing is like, who does that impress? Like literally, who is like you meet someone in a bar and they're like, I was a volleyball champion in college. What do you say? Oh, that's nice. Like it's not going to be like, oh my God, wow, volleyball, that is a sport that I follow and know lots about and care deeply about. That's not that's not a thing for people.
well, it's a wealth indicator as well, right? He played this, but also it goes to that story of he was with Baruch College and he played volleyball and beat Harvard and Yale.
Yeah.
And again, all these things that someone might check.
And it probably just started with
story.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this with Herschel Walker when he was claiming he was valedictorian and that was easily caught, because it's sort of, if you want to lie, say I graduated at the top of my, I graduated at the 5th of my class or something, or or give an SAT score that's impressive, but not something that would be, that like, someone would have written an article. Yeah, that someone would have written an article about, right? Because those are things that would be checked. No one really checks who came in 4th at the Olympics. It's like, we don't even know how many people are there. We know who won, those. If you say you won a bronze or a gold, people are going to probably look that up. So, but he would always go for these lies that are easily verified. Like the 9/11 stuff is just weird. And it's not just, obviously I'm not lying about my 9/11 stories, but when I say I was there at 9/11, I was with my ex and we remember seeing the smoke from the flames on the rooftop of her deck. Like no one can verify that, right? Like it's, and it's true, but no one could verify it. But if I'm talking about being at a specific building that went down and seeing people who died, or someone listing things, like he was saying his mother died there, like this is all stuff that's easily verifiable. If someone wants to not even just point out that you're a liar, but just want to actually write a positive story about you, because journalists like to, or should, try to confirm that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, though did you ever see the documentary The Woman That Wasn't There, or The Woman Who Wasn't There? Freaking fascinating. Is this woman who pretended to be a survivor of September 11th and was not in fact there at all. And she conned tons of people, showed up on all these like panels and all this other stuff, talking about like, how, her great losses and everything. And people went along with her for a long time because it was kind of a who would ever lie about that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the defense of people who say Democrats screwed up by not verifying a lot of his past. Some of it does fall on who would lie about this type of stuff. Like something
who would lie about being a volleyball champion? I don't, unless it was like in conversation where the person was like, he was talking to someone else who was a volleyball champion. And then he was like, oh, me too. And I beat Harvard and Yale. And then it became a thing that he just like adopted as part of his persona.
Yeah. And if you're a journalist covering that election, and you're most likely covering many elections, wasn't like a major one. So I think if you were covering, there was a lot of focus on Walker and Warnock, for instance, because it was going to come down, most likely the Senate majority on those key races. It was statewide. It was a lot of, we wrote a lot of stories.
A famous person.
Yes, exactly. So this is like some minor. If you were going to cover it at all, it's more of just like, this guy said this guy said that, he's got this support or whatever. We all know the limited amount of time that journalists have now because they're cutting resources or whatever. The idea that you're going to go chase down. That was also, I saw that as well. It was still, I mean,
see, that's sort of what I thought.
A lot of, and the term stolen valor applies to something else, but it's something that a lot of these liars do. They absorb stories from other people. And it's a form of storytelling. I mean, I do that. Like if you write fiction sometimes, you'll think of, oh, that's an interesting story someone has. I will base a character off this, or maybe this is this scenario and tweak it to make it, work. But
in order to make it more realistic. No, I definitely think that's the thing. I just think he chose weird things to lie about, which like is on some level almost having like a death wish.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Like it's not, he wasn't like you said, like he wasn't lying about important things or things that would like help him especially. He was risking all of like some pretty severe humiliation, although he does not appear to be embarrassed is the thing.
no, he's shameless. Well, I mean, it's a lot of with Gatsby, the Great Gatsby, that the character is an inveterate liar
Yeah.
to the point, and I've bored people at this point, but you know, it is this example of how Nick Carraway, the narrator, and to an extent, Fitzgerald romanticizes this pathological liar. He
Yeah.
lies about pretty much everything, and even to the point that people believe, like as fact, like if you were to study Gatsby or write about Gatsby as a book, you would say
Yeah.
who killed Myrtle Wilson? Daisy Buchanan ran her over, even though the only witness to that in the story is the known liar, Jay Gatsby. So generally speaking, we would think, well, no, maybe he ran Myrtle over and then pretended that it was Daisy, mostly because he wants to believe that
Yeah.
that he's taking this bullet for her, which he literally did. But we don't question him. Why don't we
Because
question
why is
him?
it? It's not something people would generally lie about.
Exactly. And I use the Santos thing. He's it is interesting. You've written at the time about former Representative Katie Hill. She was forced out of um Congress because of the revenge porn that her, as you wrote, her ex wanted to ruin her life and succeeded. And it was frustrating because
Yeah.
obviously, why did this succeed? Um, I don't need to defend her choices to resign. Obviously, I said at the time that my understanding was that there were more pictures that could potentially come out, and
Yeah.
she was sort of like trying to protect herself. But I think what's come up now, especially because Democrats lost that seat, Christy Smith kept losing to the
Yeah.
guy who, and she was someone of a great future. She was a tremendous fundraiser, and she was just bam taking out. It was clear who the bad guys were, and this is not this. This is someone,
Yeah.
you know, she was having a consensual affair, even if it's a staffer. But come on, and
Yeah. No,
whereas,
it was literally revenge porn.
but Santos is being fully protected in a way that is sort of it's kind of appealing from mafia way. We discussed this last week, how Republicans are kind of like, look, if you pray to our God or whoever, you know,
Hmm.
this is what you need to do. But if you do this, we will protect you from pretty much everything in ways that Democrats aren't. I think if you've noted, there'll be someone who's like, prove you're a good liberal, Robin, and run down all these other liberals. It's kind of like a way of, you know,
And you say, I mean, I at least know that like I would automatically have a reaction to that because and I assume most people on the left would as well. Like most people I know would not be like, oh yeah, no, we'll totally go along with this person who is obviously a very creepy liar and con artist. That's fine. We'll just pretend that they're great. And I'm seeing some people on the part of Twitter that I don't really pay attention to kind of push for that sort of cognitive dissonance, but it does not work for me. And
well,
I
yeah,
don't hang out with anyone who is
but I think
into that.
it is appealing if you're not particularly a great person or just like that, you will be protected from your worst
Yeah.
instincts. You'll be protected by the gang because Republicans are a gang in many ways, and they will protect. Um, yeah, I mean, I respect the we're not a cult point of
Yeah.
view. I think it is more like, as I said, it's more like a gang than a cult because it endures beyond one man. Frankly, it's been enduring beyond Trump. I mean, Trump was one thing, but even Trump was not about Trump. I've often argued. I felt like it's important to look at. It wasn't just that Republicans were standing behind Trump no matter what he did. It was more like, I am not going to side with you. So it's not like that he's
Yeah.
their magical cult master and love him, because Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert were like, F you, we're not going to, you tell us to support McCarthy, we're not going to do it. So it's more of just, um we don't, if you like this, we don't. And if
Yeah.
this will make you happy. Like, I'm sorry with Kavanaugh,
Oh yeah.
right? Like we thought, like everyone thought, like, oh no. And I would see this as well. People were saying, look, we'll give you Barrett. Like if you just withdraw Kavanaugh and resubmit Barrett. This was back in
Yeah.
2018. We'll do it. They still wouldn't, because it's like, no, this would make you happy. We're not going to do that. And I think that gets to what you saw with the gas stoves, right? It's
Yeah.
like not.
No, there's a lot of spite happening. Like I mean, spite is a big motivator for everyone, to some degree or not. Like we've all had some success in our lives, I think, just because we wanted to spite someone we really hated. At least I know I have. Um, but at this point, it's getting that, like, they'll, oh no, I'm done with M&Ms. I'm done. I'm gonna leave my gas stove on for 24 hours, and damn it, if damn my gas bill. Like they'll go along with anything, and I really feel like we do not use this power enough. Like this is power. We should be telling them to do like getting them to do all kinds of messed up things.
Like what?
Well, okay. This is one that I did in middle school, and I mentioned this on Twitter the other day. Back when I was in middle school, people were like, the jock guys were like, "Oh, you're a weird chick and your mom's a hippie. Tell us how to get high." So I had a lot of fun with this, as did my mother. At first, I sold them oregano. I had them huffing opium-scented incense in class, which is like obviously not a drug. And then my coup de grace was, if you take, smoking banana peels, I did that too. But if you take cotton balls and dunk them in cod liver oil and put them in your ears, that's totally going to give you like a super great high. I had only
Mm.
ever, I was like, 12. I had only ever smoked pot. Like it wasn't like, I actually did have any great knowledge of any of this. And then they all walked around smelling like fish. And I feel like, we could do something like that. That is within our wheelhouse. We could make up anything and say, don't do this to cure COVID or cancer
Oh
or,
yeah.
whatever. And then they will go out and do that thing.
Well, yeah, and this is why I said it's about hatred of us more than being a
Yeah.
cult. I think sometimes cults do you, and that's why I push back on the cult framing, because I think
Yeah.
there's a certain dynamics of cults, and some cults do have a sort of us versus them, but it's more like, don't trust the people who are telling you that we're not great type of things. But it's not here. It's like half the country really believes that the other half is overtly horrible and terrible and out to get them. And it's not about borders. For a party that talks about borders, it's really beyond borders, because essentially, like with the Harry and Meghan thing, it's always compelling that you have amongst the right, they're bonding with um, the royal family over an American citizen because she's, this awful brown woman. So Oh, Robin is frozen on me and vanished. No, Robin is not a good role model. We're reverse psychology. Yes. I think
Okay, my something went out.
uh yeah, I think the challenge, as I was saying, is sort of that it's beyond board. It's a sort of, we fundamentally don't like you people, and we think you're out to get us. So anything you're saying is awful and terrible, even if it's to try to benefit you. So
Yeah.
with COVID vaccines, I think even more so, the people are inclined, and I think Democrats have struggled with that, because it's sort of, well, we mean well. How can we reach you? But it's
Mhm.
not. None, you. We're no. They're not going to take candy from you. They see you
Yeah.
as scary man in a van. So if it's healthcare, if it's, um, not giving your children childhood asthma, If it's not dying from a preventable disease,
I
because you
mean,
won't get the
the sad
vaccine.
thing is, I was thinking about all these things that we could hypothetically do, and none of them are actually that much worse than the things that they actually have done to own the libs. Like they literally decided, we'd rather die than we would absolutely rather die than uh then take the vaccine because liberals say to take the vaccine. We will do things to actually put our health in danger. And I will say, someone brought up the smoking thing. I don't smoke regular cigarettes anymore, but when I did, I will admit that I had a little bit of this going on because I couldn't stand non-smokers because I found them smug.
Oh yeah.
And I also felt that they ruined dive bars. Um, like But so I do kind of get the like doing self-destructive things because you're annoyed by other people. And I've done it. I'm sure other people have done it to some degree as well, but they're, doing it in these like mass organized ways that
Yeah.
it's
Well,
incredible.
no one likes fundamentalists, right?
Yeah.
So there's a fundamentalism about that comes from the left and the right. I think a lot from the
Hmm.
left. And I've ruffled feathers by this. I said that there's been some fundamentalism and a lot of diversity and equity inclusion programs and stuff that creates backlash because unfortunately, white folks do somewhat have a majority and a majority of power. So if you tell them they suck, they're going to potentially probably not take that as well as you would hope and be like, no, tell me how much more I suck and I will promise to be a better person. Most people don't respond well to that. I think a message has to be somewhat redemptive, right? Like, so
Hmm.
here's where we can always be better. And same with management, right? Any form of
Yeah.
management. So that comes into when someone comes in and says, here's how you screwed up and whatever. You just want to quit. You just hate your boss. But like if someone's like, okay, well, here's how we can do better and improve. You find that inspiring and you want to do better. And I think that has to be sort of where the message is, not like where, okay, well, all these people in rural America who voted for
Yeah.
Trump are terrible. And if they like Joe Rogan or listen to Joe Rogan, or if they listen to this person, or if they do that, they're awful. And if you listen to J.K. Rowling, you might as well shoot trans people. It becomes very controversial. It just becomes hard. It's sort of fundamentalism. It's hard to get people to be like, okay, well, where can we come to an understanding and move forward?
Hmm. Hmm. For sure. I think that a lot of what happens, unfortunately, is that we tend, we are both extremely online people. And we are also, fairly well schooled in the ways of left-wing thought and whatnot. But a lot of people who are, hearing certain things for the first time, it's not translating as well.
No.
Like they didn't go to a school that taught them these things early on. They didn't, go to college and take these classes. They didn't have parents that were teaching them these things. So a lot of the time there's like, oh, here's a brand new concept and you got to get on board with it immediately, where people feel like, oh my God, did I miss something? I will occasionally be like, oh, before I mention this person's name, I should make sure that they haven't done anything obnoxious. We're going on a little trip. Sorry, guys, I get a thing. Because the air is driving me crazy. There we go. Sorry. Like I just literally could not hear anything. Um, sorry about my giant face there. Um, and yes, my ring light just broke, so there's that. This is a really normal time that I'm having. Um,
Well, we can all still see you.
so there we go. So yeah. Sorry about that. Back to very serious discussions that are not about the loudness of the forced air in my apartment.
No, that's why you should wear the headphones. I wear them all the time.
I
Even like
mean, I could, but I don't think they wouldn't look cute.
well,
I mean,
I
they are cute. They're rose gold, but that doesn't go with everything.
wow, I don't know. I think you look quite fetching in headphones. But yes, you were saying that the often like looking to see if someone's been canceled and all this sort of a lot of the stuff is not particularly very well if you're not tremendously online. Twitter, some of the stuff would be like it does feel like, again, the fundamentalism, like, oh, you've said the wrong thing or done the wrong thing, and
Yeah, and then people
you
get
have to
scared of
dig
that.
in.
Like I'm always like, oh man, I'm gonna say something and I didn't realize that the person did a terrible thing. And then people are gonna yell at me, and no one likes that. I think it's definitely stopped being as much of a thing as it was a few years ago. I don't see it as often.
Oh yeah, well, what
Um,
I think also something that comes up being online is like when Republicans are first to snatch something, because um Democrats weren't necessarily actually going out using the term woke. So it wasn't like this is very clearly
mhm,
you could point to where Kamala Harris or some, other prominent Black Democrats were using this term, and then suddenly Republicans are using it derisively. They are saying, "Oh no, no, this is something that these
well, they're saying,
horrible left, academics are using, and it's ridiculous." And then almost sort of behind the curve, Democrats would respond and be like, "Oh, this is no better than the N word," because they are taking something that Black women did and are now adopting it. And what happens is, I think, for a lot of average people of all races, they're like, "Well, I don't know. The first time I heard that term was from, what do you mean? Like it's something that." So I think it becomes very easy to wear a lot of this coded language that is coded to be offensive deliberately, because that's their way of doing it. They're sort of poking at
mhm,
minority, but like terms like triggered and so forth. There was the person who I think fired the school that fired someone for showing photos of Muhammad or images of Muhammad,
mhm,
and had given a trigger warning, and the person was like, well, trigger warnings are also still bad because all you're doing is announcing your intent to do harm, which is one of those new things, which is just like, well, no, I thought the trigger warning was just that we are discussing something that could be triggering, and you can choose to either withdraw
mhm,
or be aware of it. But it's not like now I think had been reshaped to essentially be premeditated awfulness, which is of course
mhm,
not what those warnings were intended to be. So it's very hard to shift that, right? Because and academia does exist in a vacuum in a certain way and can seem
mhm.
weird. And Republicans are very good at grabbing a lot of that and making it seem just the most absurd,
Well, they'll
silly
just
thing.
get grabbed from it and like pick the thing that is, the most ridiculous, or not most ridiculous so much as like least comprehensible to a regular person. Like, I think it is great to have conversations about these sort of things. I think that for a very long time, uh, these were conversations that were had without them being involved at all.
Oh yeah.
Like they were held, they were not being held online. They were being held in academia and, at bars and like just like regular normal conversation. And, we didn't generally talk to those people. So there's a lot of like, we're coming in with like a lot of understanding, and other people are like, I had no idea that any of this was ever being discussed, and it seems weird, and it seems like there's minutia, and it's annoying because I don't totally understand it, which is sort of fair because, if there's a subject that you don't totally understand, if people are like being really like detaily about it, then you're like, this is boring and these people are pedantic. Please, I do not want to ever sit at this
Well,
table again.
general human, there's to me there's no empathy without curiosity, right?
Yeah.
So if curiosity is being viewed as being offensive, that's a problem. And I've seen that again in quote unquote the woke circles of Portland and Seattle or whatever. So if you have like a perfectly well-meaning 70-year-old white lady who's just like, okay, well, can you explain X, Y, and Z or this? I generally don't know. I'm this.
Yeah.
I live on Mercer Island or something like, whatever. And the response is then sort of, oh, you are racist or you're transphobic, and it's generally like, I just don't understand all this, or just even things like the expression of some of this being racist. So it's like, oh, when I was young, we didn't talk about this, is a legitimate thing that you can
Yeah.
engage with. But instead, it's more of like, oh, here's the way that you are racist. I don't know it. And it seems to be a way that people have been trained to engage with others. I don't know. And so it's just very ineffective, because if you go with that, most people are going to be like, I'm done with this. I mean, I've seen this with and we've talked about this sort of in the political sense. So like when people like Liz Warren, or then now Katie Porter, or with sort of this reaction of like, these are these horrible racist people. It's like, what? Really? I have no idea what you're talking about.
I
Or like,
didn't realize how much people hate those, like that particular group of people hated Katie Porter. That is, and loved Dianne Feinstein, I guess.
well, someone had a funny thread on Twitter about that, because it was kind of a very sort of, black women choose will choose who the real nominee be, who Feinstein's replacement will be. Black women don't like, and it's a white woman saying this, but black women don't like Katie. When a black person responds, who's a no? It's not just someone using a black face; it's a pretty prominent black woman. It's like, I like Katie. I like Katie Porter. What are you talking about? And I think some of this happens a lot where, um, we talked about this also, like when you get to the sense of, yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy. Like here's a Trump support. Most Trump supporters I've encountered are pretty awful people, especially now, like the
Yeah.
ones who are full on MAGA publicly. But then like sometimes you'll just have this sense of like, here's what I think of all Warren supporters or all Porter supporters. And it's like, you're insulting a lot of people who are otherwise your allies, and you would not have known that about them. You just went on this assumption that they are terrible, and it's not productive at all.
I mean, honestly, I feel like a lot of that is ego. I think so. I think there are a lot of white women who very much like to deflect criticism of themselves by being like, no, I am this incredible ally to Black women, and I'm good at this, and I will say what all the, I will speak for Black women. I am so.
We're losing Robin again. I'm gonna grab Sharon CRT. Yes, critical race theory, I've always thought, is just a very weird, like, why did you come up with that? It just seems like it just is designed to sound scarier than it is. It seems like we come up with academic terms that then have to be re-explained as something normal. And
Sorry.
I don't I'm sorry, you were saying about Katie Porter being.
Well, I think it's a similar phenomenon to like, the male feminist thing where, I mean, yes, obviously there are men who are feminists. You are, and I would not hang out with you otherwise, even on the internet. But, the whole like men were like, my identity is being a male feminist. And then they end up being Hugo Schweizer. Or, terrible in other ways. And I think that there's an element of, I know that that's not what methinks thou dost protest too much actually did mean, but the, colloquial meaning of it tends to apply in a lot of these situations. Like when people are like, sort of trying too hard. And, I think there is also an element of just genuinely not wanting to be an asshole and not necessarily knowing the best way to go about that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean, it's really effective. Yeah, and I do think that that's sort of I think in a way it comes back to the sort of fun of George Santos thing, because there is that he's in a weird way fully embraced by his party, and it kind of reinforces that there is no really ideological schisms beyond, do you really hate Democrats, and will you
Mhm.
repeat these talking points? And he does, and he's willing to say whatever is necessary. So he's like he's fully embraced. There's no one who, you know, is willing to grab his mistake. I know with Fetterman, like he had the issue with the shotgun, and because people had an ideological issue with him because he had once supported Sanders,
Mhm.
who was seen as progressive, they sort of leapt on that of, oh, he's a racist, and this is going to be my identity for opposing Fetterman. And no one's really leaping on that against Santos because there isn't sort of an idea. It's not like, oh, well, I'm going to talk about his lies because he supports, doesn't support, lowering taxes for rich people or something. There's really isn't anything there. It's more of just, so to want to reject him, and there are Republicans who do, but to want to reject him then just comes up looking like you're trying to give Democrats a win, and that's
And they
the
don't
worst
want
thing
to do
you can
that.
do. That's the worst you can do. So it's kind of like let him annoy Democrats for 2 years, and then we'll see what happens. I think James Comer was the one who was saying that if he had looked like he had done something fuzzy with his campaign finances, and of course he should be expelled, but not for actual lies or anything. And McCarthy and I think some others have tried to sort of like, everyone lies. I think he has said that everyone inflates their resume, which is kind of not what he did at all. Like he just sort of
Yeah.
made up stuff entirely and was not. He sort of perpetuated this fraud on the his constituents. But I think he's going to sit on committees. And what's interesting is that people thought, well, obviously, McCarthy can't. He's saying that he's bouncing Schiff because he lied, and he's saying that he's bouncing Swalwell from committees because Eric Swalwell was a security risk. Surely Santos is just as much of one, but hypocrisy. I mean, we have to stop trying to engage Republicans on some kind of concept of intellectual or moral consistency. But at least as we define it, all
Mhm.
that seems to matter to them is the expression of power. So these people are in our group, we protect them. Anyone outside our group, we're going to smash, and that's just how we roll.
I mean, there is this obsession in the center left of the center left has a bit of an obsession with the idea of the principled Republican, the principled conservative, who just really believes in the things that he believes in and is going to go against their party when they do things that are not like good or wholesome, and that never actually happens. There are like a few of them here and there, but there's not a lot of them, and they don't do it often enough, frankly. And they're still like terrible in other ways. I think that this is giving them an opportunity to be like, this is who we are. We are fine with this, and I think that Democrats and the left should accept that.
Oh yeah, well, it's the sort of the idea of MAGA Republicans when they're all Republicans, right? So it's sort of
Yeah.
like, if like at a certain point it becomes like uber Nazis. It's like, what? I think they're all Nazis. What do you mean? But I'm having trouble with connecting the difference between one and the other, and especially after election after election, after moment. So it's like, okay, here's your 2016 exit ramp. There were Republicans who did exit the party in 2016 and became, we would call them center right
Yeah.
Democrats now. There are folks who exit the party at this point, but there are others who are just, I was talking about this with Rebecca the other day of Nancy Mace. She's in South Carolina. She's representing a fairly purplish district.
Mhm.
Like, Joseph Cunningham had carried it. She flipped it in 2018. She could probably, as a country club, sort of Abigail Spanberger style Democrat, she could probably hold that seat. So she's
Mhm.
a Republican. She is choosing to kiss up to Trump despite his targeting her, trying to get her primaried out. She's making this choice. She's making a choice to stand with this party right now. And that's the one that everyone sort of mentions as being like, oh, well, she might have been one of the principled Republicans. Like, well, she's not. She's not a moderate, and she's not. I mean, I don't, because at this point, there's when people
No
talk
one
about their,
actually said we're principled though. Screw you, I'm very principled. Like there's never like, oh, the principled liberals. That like which is weird because we do generally have principles.
well, then you're just well, that just means you're purity ponies.
Yes.
So
Oh,
that's a
that is
weird
true, yeah.
way of interpreting principles. So it's like they imagine principles amongst these people who don't have them, and then people who assert to have principles are purity ponies who don't accept that making a compromise for the pursuit of power in the short term is better. And you could strategically say, yes, you should compromise what you view are very important principles for the greater good or greater point. That's what Nancy Mace is doing. That's what all these Republicans do. So when you're like, well, why don't they get rid of Kavanaugh? It's like, well, no, if my goal was to overturn Roe v. Wade, my goals are evil, my principles are
Hmm.
evil, but I did
But I
not
stick to them.
sacrifice those principles for some sort of kumbaya being nice to Democrats thing. And so I think that is what
And they
that's
actually made the Kavanaugh stuff really work for them, like on their side. Because you can, like, all these people are like, and what they did to poor Brett Kavanaugh
yeah, they
just
still
breaks my heart. And they're like, you know, they have been riding that one to the bank for a couple years now.
well,
Like,
Nancy Mace, yeah, and Nancy Mace is interesting. Back to her, you talk about Kavanaugh and Roe and these portions because she's one of the one who talks about like claiming to be supporting some degree of abortion
mhm,
rights and some degree of, well, don't set fire to gay people type,
yeah,
that type of stuff. And so, to the extent that you would argue that Democrats are, have are unflexible or say like inflexible or say this is what you have to believe. It's more of on these quote unquote issues of human rights, right? So
yeah,
if ultimately at this point, if you're center right, and I think Jennifer Rubin's an example of this. So if you're someone who supports freedom of choice in any way and supports like not harassing or persecute, because that's all someone like
yeah,
DeSantis does. So if you're just someone like this is all BS, I'm going to be a Democrat from a purplish state, Nancy Pelosi would have, Hakeem Jeffries definitely will embrace you and be
yeah.
like, yeah, I think rich people should never pay a lick of taxes. I am, pro corporate, pro this, but I'm this, which is sort of this idealized idea of what good Republicans could be. But those, if those good Republicans existed, they would be welcome to be Democrats.
Hmm.
There's they'd
Yeah.
be welcome to I mean, just like with the
I,
cinema. And so if you those things are important to you, but it's obviously not, like they clearly are people who ultimately, despite what they might say, like Susan Collins or whatever, ultimately they support the larger Republican goal of white cis dominance
mhm.
of the country, because
Yeah.
that's why they're part of this party.
Well, the principle that they have is that they're very goal oriented. They don't care, what anyone is doing. They're like, what are you going to do for me? And if you are going to do that thing, then great. Um, I sort of understand that to some degree. Like, I don't really, I don't like the sort of picking apart of people's personalities and like, oh, is that woman's voice annoying? Or, oh, what if they're not electable? And or hey, they said something wrong 25 years ago. I think that, that sort of hyper analysis doesn't really do us any favors. Um, And we probably should be more, hey, we don't care as long as we get what we want, to a degree. Like, we're not like, hey, let's elect a murderer and rapist to, some office. But we should be primarily focused on getting the shit done that needs to get done.
Well, the electable argument is so inconsistent, right? Because because Val Demings, again, I go back to this in Florida, Val Demings and Charlie Crist were curb stomped, and we don't want to. No one would say like, oh, maybe a more liberal candidate would have won. Instead, if they were liberals who had gotten crushed that badly, or even just lost narrowly, it would have been like, oh, we could have definitely won if we had nominated more moderate pro-cop candidate. And we just we did that, and you lost to a fascist, and to Marco Rubio's sort of a literal empty suit, an insult to empty suits everywhere. So no, I mean, Santos has a great potential career ahead of himself.
Oh yeah.
You look at, Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Green are horrible people, and they've been fully embraced. They are not pathological liars in the same way as he is, so they're not as entertaining. At least with Santos, like, oh my goodness,
about a lot of things. He lies about himself, though. So
yes, I
that's
think
where it's
their sense of lying is they yes, it's sort of a different. Yeah, he just sort of yes, you're right that they are. But it's sort of is an interesting type of lying of just kind of like so disingenuous in what they say of like, oh, liberals did this and that means they hate us, and this is why. So you're right, there's sort of this kind of persecution complex that they have that is not rooted in reality, similar to how he's not rooted in reality about his own sense. So I mean, I guess if you're George Santos and believe you're a star volleyball player from college, it's similar to Marjorie Green, who believes that she is in fact not a terrible person but an effective leader and is not overtly evil. And she is, but I think she doesn't see it that way. I think she sees it as like the other people are out to get her and be cruel to her.
I think that there is a sort of, I think that the lying actually works for him in a lot of ways, because like when you talk about like belief and fanaticism, people become, the more absurd a belief is, the more obviously patently untrue it is, the more fanatically people will be devoted to it. As a rule, all of the cults you've heard of believe like the super like kookiest things. It's not like where anyone's hearing about cults where they are just nice people. And that's our religion, we're nice people. The more it takes to believe something, the more suspension of disbelief it takes to believe something, the more like the more fiercely people will defend it, because they don't want to feel embarrassed. It's why all religions are based on weird supernatural nonsense, because no one's going to go to like a church or anything every week to just be told, hey, don't be an asshole, which would be a really cool religion, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've often gone with that with about Christianity, because as a science fiction fan or fantasy, I always felt like the religions were consistent. So if you're an uber logical Vulcan, your god is this uber logical person, the sort of personification of what you already are. And the Vulcan and the Klingon god is this huge warrior who won all these battles, and that's who you want to be. And the American right, it's like their god is this clearly not what they want to be or what they would respect. And so this is this cognitive dissonance, because Jesus is not someone who, and to the point where they will quote him, his stuff about peace and love, and his, of course, willingness to sacrifice himself as opposed to raising an army to get, like, he didn't arm himself and take out the Romans, which is what and it's not even like he did this and failed, and you could say, okay, well, we're going to do it and succeed. All right, I can get behind. It's like, no, literally, this is what he was. And so, I mean, Martin Luther Green would have clearly been one of the ones, like if you've seen the Jesus Christ Superstar musical, been going crucify him with the little
Yes.
pom-poms and whatever.
They love
So
it. They love a chant. They love a chant is one thing I know about the right. We don't chant much. We don't do, I mean, except in protests. Although weirdly, I have noticed that like in their protests, they steal all of our protest chants. Like they don't have any of their own. Like they're out there
no,
doing like, whose streets, our streets. And I'm like, please, we've been doing that since freaking Seattle. I think, and before then probably, but I, wasn't around. But like they do not come up with a lot of their own material.
oh yeah, they most of the whole thing of the Christian church thing, that they're taking that from the 1970s to see how the FBI had false, harassed and persecuted anyone from, especially the civil rights movement, but the women's movement, any sort of movement who was they viewed threatening the nation status quo. And they're comparing that to the FBI just sort of investigating people who try to attack the Capitol in broad daylight and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they're always sort of, they're big on stolen valor. Even like Carrie Lake talking about how
and stolen Burberry scarves. Sorry.
Yes. Well, I mean, that is meant to indicate that he's just someone who wants to belong, which of course is, I wouldn't say admirable, but it is a relatable human trait. Yeah, I like to think I'm not that predictable, but I was talking about Gatsby earlier.
I have no idea what he's talking about. So I'm just sitting here like, I think that's what's kind of funny about it. Cause I'm just like, I have absolutely no idea what is happening here. Although I now kind of feel like I know what a Vulcan is just from Stephen talking about it.
You have the Vulcan or Romulan bangs. You're probably more Romulan than Vulcan, though. I
have good bangs. I like my bangs. They're actually, they're too long right now.
I am not insulting them. I'm just saying that it's a cool haircut. I just always liked at sci-fi that they believed that everyone would have the same haircut. They would all get together. That's the key to, we're all gonna, this is our haircut.
Also, unitard.
This is how we're going to dress from now on. And there's no.
Yeah, generally speaking, I think like unitards are the outfit of the future. Every time, like in every Twilight Zone episode where they're like, hey, people are in the future, they're all wearing unitards all the time. And it's kind of interesting because we already sort of like passed that era ourselves now that all the American apparels have closed. But I don't know that we're going to get back on the unitard trend anytime soon.
It's very hard to do speculative fashion, because fashion is, so people have always struggled with that, or figuring out what fashion comes back. Yeah.
That is actually really easy. Fashion recycles every 30 years.
So the 90s are coming back?
Yes. Well, actually, the 90s have been back for a while now. What's actually coming, it might be more like 25, 20 years, because actually what's back right now is so awkwardly the 2000s. So yeah, that's experiencing a renaissance. A lot of backless shirts are happening. I've seen big pants making a comeback. I would not be mad at UFO pants making a comeback because they were really, really comfortable and great for cleaning your apartment. So yeah, that's actually the butterfly clips. Hold on. Bell bottom. Those are actually, bell bottoms have been in style, maybe not for men, but for women for years now. One thing that I do like is that I feel like all jean fits are in style at the moment, which is wonderful for us women anyway.
And the wide ties. I don't know. I was not a fan of 70s fashions, but I kind of.
I can't see you in a white tie. I feel like you're a skinny tie person.
Yeah, I'm very my ideal dress was sort of Mad Men, even though I would not have been able to freely move about in that society, but that is sort of how I would have liked to address um or kind of late Victorian era would have
Oh,
also been nice.
I think you'd be like you could wear like those poofy pants that are, yeah, I can see that. That would be a very good look for you. Like the sort of Edwardian era look for, or oh my God, what's the thing that you were talking,
Are you thinking Regency?
yes, yes,
Yes,
that is what I was
Regency.
thinking. Because yeah, you do love your Regency era shit.
I'm probably more Victorian turn of the century. I tried to have mutton chops like Quentin Collins once. So I but yes, enough of fashion.
Yes.
Do you were I think I saw you're working on something about based on what you were saying earlier about how Christians believe that if they can't be complete assholes to people that they are being denied their
Well,
rights.
I'm writing up this Fisking this terrible Federalist essay about how hold on, absolutely not, no ruffles ever. That was very important. I had to address that. It was an emergency. So there's an article in the Federalist where this lady who is always saying very stupid things claims that in Minnesota, they're banning in her headline, they're banning Christian, Jewish, and Muslim teachers, and then it turns out they're just telling teachers that they can't be shitty to trans kids. Like, I didn't know that, like, it was a thing that people are like, no, we really want teachers to be terrible to the students. That would be really great. More of that, please. I don't.
It just seems also, I just want to put in perspective for folks as having lived through the 80s, been to school, sorry, very Bible Belt, South Carolina.
Mhm.
Teachers weren't overtly, I mean, and I had racist teachers, so but like as a point of fact, so no one was actually calling me the N-word in class, and teachers weren't, definitely when you're talking about queer kids, would never support bullying queer kids. So they would certainly,
Oh, they did in Massachusetts, but
I said maybe it's a Southern politeness. It was more of like
yeah.
if that the type of stuff would be like you'd get called to the principal's office if someone was like bullying a kid for those or calling them certain names. You were not allowed to do that because name calling is bad. Now, obviously, the certain concepts of respecting someone's gender identity and calling someone by their preferred pronouns, maybe that's more complicated for folks now, but I think that was, no one wants to be a jerk or should want to
Yeah.
be a jerk.
I mean, there were a lot of substitute teachers that didn't want to pronounce my last name. Things are tough all over, but it's not going to be the end of the world if they have to be nice to a student, because that is their job. I actually do have an opinion on this, so I would like to hear yours.
They're all different and weird in their own ways. Depends what you want. The Disney one is bizarre. It bugged me because it would steal a lot of the Red Queen from Through the Looking Glass, some of her best lines, and give them to the Queen of Hearts, who is a different character. The Burton film did the same thing, and Helena Bonham Carter is playing a weird amalgamation of the Red Queen and the Queen of Hearts. So I don't know. Choose whichever suits your fancy. What's your opinion before we take off?
Obviously, the one with Carol Channing.
That one I remember in Anne Gillian. I saw that as a kid. I think you're younger
It's
enough.
so messed up.
How did you ever
I
see?
love it.
You're significantly younger than I am. There's no way, because that would have been.
Oh no, I saw it on I didn't like watch it live or anything. I watched it.
I remember watching it live and being somewhat disturbed by the Jabberwocky moment, because it was both. I thought it was scary, but it was actually just a really bad puppet. I can't imagine it was ever shown again. Maybe it was. It was such an unsuccessful adaptation and so
It's on,
poorly
I can't,
done.
at least the Carol Channing part is on,
Oh, it's out there. It is very weird.
bother.
I suggest looking it up, but it is
Um,
very bizarre.
yeah, no, I just hung around with a lot of drag queens when I was in high school, so I
Yeah.
was very much familiar with the oeuvre of Ms. Carol Channing. Um,
Well, thank you, and I hope someone picks it. That's the one they should pick. Then pick this one because you will never have seen anything as bizarre. But you'd probably have to go on YouTube to find it. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next week. Have a good week.
Bye.